What's up, everybody? Here we are again with the MR2. Sorry, I know it's been a little while since I've uploaded anything, but here we go. So if you saw in that earlier clip, I actually got the car in the dyno for the first time, and we had a bit of a ignition timing issue. And what it is I'm pretty sure that the mechanical timing is off slightly because of my original settings, and I'll go over that here in a second in the software. Although I'm not getting any errors in my ignition signals, they're syncing up correctly, full RPM sync. When I set the timing originally on the compression stroke, I didn't zero out the 10 degrees added at cranking. So when I set the timing, I'm pretty sure I was off, obviously, and I've had an issue running fully sequential spark. Fuel is fine, spark is not. So it backfires like crazy when I try to start it on fully sequential ignition. And if I switch it over to wasted coil unplug, not coil unplug, it runs fine on wasted coil unplug. So reading through the manual on the MS3PRO manual, watching some videos online, my issue should be, in theory, that I gotta go ahead and reset my tooth number 1 angle, or in other ECUs, the offset angle for your ignition timing, right? So I gotta reset that. I gotta zero everything out, and I'll show you that on the software side, and reset the timing. So put the engine, cylinder 1, top dead center. I did get a piston stop just to make sure. It is a used engine. It may be off just slightly, so got a piston stop. I'll make sure that mechanically the timing is set, so I'll make sure that we're on compression stroke on cylinder number 1, top dead center. I'll compare it to the factory marks, and if it's off, it's off. I'll make a new mark, and we'll go off of that one. We'll crank it over. We'll find out exactly how many degrees off the tooth number 1 is, and then according to the software, according to the manual in the software, to run that sequential ignition, whatever that angle is that I found, I'll add 360 degrees to the timing in the software, and it should give me access to run fully sequential ignition and fuel. We had cylinder number 1, right? Top dead center, compression stroke. So we had the cams all zeroed out. Down there was kind of zeroed out. And then on the dampener, I went back a little bit, put in the piston stop, and now we rotate. I marked it. I just randomly marked it there. So now we're going to rotate the engine all the way back until we stop again, mark it, and then between the first and the second mark, that should be half of that should be top dead center. Cool? See if it works. Yay. Right here on the valve cover, there's a little bump, and I marked it with pink, and I marked the back of the tooth in pink, where that tooth is there. Same with the intake cam and the exhaust cam, so you know that when they're perfectly straight up and they all line up, and down there it lines up, which it didn't actually, it was a little off, you know that that's your compression stroke. So who knows, maybe because it's a used engine, it might be a little off on timing, and that's where we're getting our issues. But we're gonna figure this out. We're gonna find all the kinks and get it all out of here. So in theory, once I go from that mark, the second mark I made, to the, not the factory one, but the first mark I made, and split that in the middle, theoretically, that should be true top dead center for cylinder 1 on its compression stroke. So that is what we're working with. So it looks pretty close to the factory mark, and from some of the research I've done, people who do this, they line it up as best as they can, like the way I just did it earlier, to their factory mark, and it's just slightly off. So it could be the same case here, right? So I zeroed everything out. So this tooth number 1 angle, so degrees before top dead center, what I did was I I zeroed this one out, and then cranking advance by default is 10 degrees, and I zeroed that one out. And then I unplugged my injectors, so obviously you don't get a bunch of fuel into the cylinders, and then we crank it on number 1. So we put the timing light on number 1, 100, and then 220 hit that mark that we made with the piston stop. And so now what we're gonna do is I'm putting it all back together. I'm gonna put the 222 here, and then I guess I can put the 10 back. I'm gonna do fix timing. So rather than using the table like you normally would, I'm gonna switch this over to fix timing, and then see how it goes from grayed out to now active here. Timing for fix. So you can do 10, you can do 15, whatever you need. And then we're gonna watch it again with the timing light. I'm gonna rev it up slowly and make sure that there's no deviation or timing creep and wobble. So we're gonna do that here in a second. And then if that works, I'm gonna switch it over to switch number of coils from wasted coil on plug to coil on plug. And in theory, if this setting is working with this setting, if I add 360 degrees of timing to this offset angle for number 1, it should give me coil on plug functionality. Okay, so I've power cycled, and ignition settings, I'm back using the table, cranking advance 10 degrees, coil on plug, and 580, so 360 plus 220. And in theory that should work, because it didn't before on coil on plug. So let's try it, I guess. Look at that. Holy shit. All green. Full RPM sync, idle, warm up enrichment, SD card, ready, RPM sync. So let's check it, I guess. I don't know, man. Man, that sounds good. Okay, let me turn it off, and I'm gonna set it to 5 degrees. I'm gonna fix the timing at 5 degrees and check it with the light. I'll be right back. And here's our ignition advance. So that's gonna lock in right here at 5 degrees. You'll see a 5 here, and then over here at ignition settings, once again, we're on coil on plug now, and hopefully now it'll rev out. Coil on plug, 580 degrees here for the tooth number 1 offset angle. Fix the timing at 5 degrees. And it should translate well then, hopefully, over to the crank. Hopefully we can see it. I'm sorry if we can't. So once again, all green. Here is our 5 degrees. That's just a histogram. But it should be at 5 at the crank. Or at the... down here. So up here... oh man, you can't really see it. I can see it from here. 5 degrees. Spot on. I'm going to try to rev it a little bit. It's holding. It's holding it. And then over here, I don't know if you guys can see, but the little pink mark, I can see the one that I put on the cam for the exhaust is perfectly on. And oh man, I can't. Looks pretty good. is hitting there. The intake cam. Oh man, this is cool. Okay, I'm excited. Hopefully now I can actually dial this in better and actually rev it out to over 5,900 RPM, because that's all I was getting on the dyno last week when I was on the dyno. Fuel ratio, it's all right, but sounds good. All right, I'm gonna put it back on the timing table, and I think we're good. Okay, we're on coil unplug now. Okay, I'm gonna shut it down. Accessories. No. Let's get in here. Everything looks good. Fixed timing. No. Use table. Yes. Or burn. Done. Should be, I don't know, 18 or 20. I don't remember what I have it at. 18.3-ish. Man, hopefully now we can really dial this thing in on the dyno, because while driving, it would get to about, what was it, like 183 kPa, which is roughly 13-14 psi of boost. And oh man, look at that. I like those histograms. Look at that. Pretty flat. Everything's looking better, man. Holy crap, I'm excited. But yeah, I was on the dyno, and the dyno line, or the graph, man, it was great. Power was coming on, torque was coming on, super smooth. And then it would just get right about here, and it would, I mean, ignore the fuel, because I was playing with the fuel up there, so that's a lot of fuel. Don't knock me for that. But it would get there about 5,900 RPM, about right here, and it would just flatline, just boom, right here, just completely flat across the board. It just wouldn't break that wall. So it was like going, boom, hit the wall, and it was just like, it would just sputter and kick and just buck all the way through here. And then the graph on the dyno was going crazy. But now I feel like it's idling a lot better with, you know, full sequential ignition and fuel. So that's way better, and I'm happy about this, because this was not flatlined like that. Everything is happy. Oh man, this is great. Let's see. Composite logger. Let's start that. Let's check this out. So there's our timing. So right here, this is the crank, which is the 36 with the missing 2 teeth, and this is the cam signal up here. It looks good. I'm gonna study this a little bit more when I get home. There's no lost sync errors. There's our timing. Oh man, this is looking good. Everything is pretty flat. Before, it was kind of all over the place. Oh man, I love this. This is exciting. Let's go back to my ugly setup here, right there. What is that? T-log. Let's turn that off. Oop, stop. Cluster. Everything's green. I'm happy about that. Fuel looks good. Drive this damn thing. Alright everyone, welcome back. Hey, it's actually the next day. I am no longer up at Sergio's shop. I'm over here at PPC, and I got done yesterday with the whole timing deal, and everything looked to be working fine. The thing, after I went out and tested it, it still broke up a little bit. Even worse, not worse, but like more frequently is what I'm trying to say. So I packed it up last night and went home, and I continued reading. Then I remembered, like I said yesterday in the video, make sure your parameters are correct. And I had one of them. I had this top one on falling edge. So earlier this morning I came over here to PPC. I was messing with the car, driving around a little bit, switched that over, and I got a pretty good run on the highway. It didn't break up, and it held boost, and air fuel looked good. So I think we might have fixed it now that we got the timing on the engine all figured out and dialed in, and then now we got the two ignition input capture settings correct. So hopefully maybe we can get a run or two on the dyno tonight, and if we can, hopefully we can actually rev this thing out and see what it does. So yeah, I'll cut you on here in a little bit. Alright everyone, welcome back. Not quite sure where I left off on the last little bit, but it's been a couple days and the car's running a lot better. If you guys remember just seeing not too long ago, we're playing with the timing and the tooth number 1 angle, and that's degrees before top dead center. So that's a very critical setting that you got to work on when setting up this configuration with the crank and the cam sensors and the teeth, right? So I found out why it wasn't timing. What it was my settings. So if you look here, ignition input capture, you have a rising edge, and then down here also you have a secondary trigger active on rising edge. I had this one on falling edge. Now when I wired in my sensors, my cam sensor and my crank sensor, if I remember right, depending on what the ECU sees first, which is the positive or the negative on the sensor when the tooth is coming around, you want to set that correctly. So what I did was I ran a composite log and then a tooth log, and I noticed that the cam signal was giving me like a double blip. So it wasn't registering correctly, and that's why it would hard cut at about 5,900 RPM when we were on the dyno and on the street and stuff. So I just had to go back. I did double check the timing, as you guys saw, and I had to change it a little bit. So before, when I had it on wasted coil unplug, I had this set to about 220, if I remember right. So the tooth number 1 angle before top dead center. And it would run fine, but then, doing research and reading in the manual, in order to run coil on plug, you just had to add 360 degrees to this number in order for the ECU to know that, we're off by that, full rotation. And what I did was, with the timing light, I would check the timing, I would lock it in up here so you can go and, fixed advance, and I was doing, 15 degrees, 10 degrees, and it would stay there. But as soon as I started to rev it a little bit, it would kind of wobble, or what does the manual say? Like timing creep, you know what I mean? And all I did was, I would subtract or add depending on where it was going. So I was subtracting, 3 degrees, 2 degrees, 1 degree, until it stayed at that 10 or 15 degrees, and it would stay there, and then I'd rev it up and it would stay there again. So that's all you got to do. Just make sure that you get your timing correctly, and then your settings correctly. So all I did was change this ignition input capture for this one to rising edge, and this one was already in rising edge on my old engine, the old settings I had, and that fixed it. So once we had the timing correct, the settings correct, now I can actually rev it up. I did another capture log for the ignition, or the tooth count, and the composite logger, and now it's running great and it's fine. And the car's running a lot better and a lot smoother. So been driving it a little bit more, just kind of messing around with all the settings, and I'm happy. Next thing, so on the dyno, we got to, let's see, I did 5 runs, I recorded 3 on the dyno, and out of those 3, I got 276 horsepower and 270 foot-pounds of torque. Not bad for, this little MR2 and a stock Gen 5 3S GTE. And that was with running absolutely zero duty on the wastegate, or on the boost control solenoid. So the next thing now is to start adding boost, messing with the timing, and then the fuel, and that'll come in the next little while. The lines were really consistent, and they were very smooth on the dyno graph, so I'm happy about that. And we just gotta clean it up, and maybe start adding the more boost, change up fuels. We can do ethanol and see what that does. I don't want to go crazy, but I think we can probably crack the 300 horsepower range once we clean it up on the dyno. But right now, it's just a fun little ride. I took it to a meet last night with a couple buddies and had a lot of fun. That's where we're at now. So right now, I'm going to go drive it around a little bit and just enjoy it for a little while. So anyway, I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.